To get us started here as we head into the afternoon, it is my great pleasure to introduce Marc Stoiber. He is the CEO of a company aptly named Brands Investors Love. And I'm just going to throw it out there. He might be talking to you about how to build brands that investors love. He is very specifically named for the talent that he brings to the table, and he's going to do exactly that. So he has left a huge mark on companies that have insanely iconic brands, Mr. Clean, McDonald's, Budweiser, and he is going to talk about a roadmap around building brands that attract investors and pave the way for sustainable and healthy growth inside of organizations. So can't wait. Put your hands together for Marc Stoiber, everybody. Come on.
Thank you. 80%. I hate 80%. I hate 80% because 80% represents the percentage of entrepreneurs and founders who want to exit their company in a meaningful way, but can't. I also hate 75%, if we're on the subject of numbers that I hate. 75% represents that small minority of entrepreneurs who do have an exit, but are entirely dissatisfied with the outcome. The reward was not anywhere commensurate with the risk. I hate 80% and 75% because I love entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are people who move the world forward. Can we agree on that? How many entrepreneurs here? Yeah, don't be shy. You move the world forward. You run towards risk like firefighters running into a building when everybody else is running out. You embrace new ideas. You embrace innovation. You believe so hard. You are endless optimists. The world needs you. And to think that 80% of you, when you want to exit, will not be able to, or will exit for a valuation far lower than you were hoping. It breaks my heart. This is personal for me. My dad was an entrepreneur. Years and years plowed into the business. And when he wanted to get out, he couldn't. He walked away. It crushed him. Today, I want to share 3 insights with you. 3 insights that I've learned along the way that will hopefully get you thinking and get you moving toward building a brand that investors love. Whether you ever want investment or you ever want an exit or not, it doesn't matter. 3 insights and 1 tool that you can take from this, turn around, and use today to make your website, your sales pitch, your presentation, your everything better tomorrow. So first, a little bit of background, a little bit of context, who I am and what I'm doing here. I wasn't raised as an entrepreneur. I began my career as a writer and a creative director in advertising. I worked with some of the biggest agencies in the world, in Asia and Europe, and then North America. I worked on all the big brands. As Michael mentioned, I worked on Procter & Gamble. They make half the stuff in your house. I worked on Unilever. They make the other half of the stuff in your house. I worked on Budweiser. I worked on McDonald's. I worked on a ton of brands like that. I made all the money. I got all the awards. But I have to say, the most rewarding part of my experience in advertising was fixing stuff. It appears that I had a bit of an entrepreneurial bug in me, right from an early age. I liked fixing stuff. I became known as a turnaround guy in the agency world. My team and I fixed 3 agencies, taking them from mediocre to great. We also liked fixing brands. You mentioned Mr. Clean. When we won the Mr. Clean account, the brand was on the verge of bankruptcy. 2 years later, after working with us, Mr. Clean was Procter & Gamble's global turnaround of the year. A lot of kids went to college on that upswing. So that's what I do, or that's what I did, because I wanted to get out of big advertising, and I did. Left Toronto, came to Vancouver, now in Victoria, and I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to work with entrepreneurs. I wanted to bring some of that big brand stuff into the world of entrepreneurs. I can still remember the day. I was sitting with Dan Gunn, a name that might be familiar to you or not. He runs Viatech, which is the tech incubator out in Victoria. And I said, Dan, I want to get into this world. What can I do? He said, do you know tech? I said, I don't know anything about tech. He said, so what do you do? What's your superpower? I said, well, I take this wild and woolly world, which is what consumers want but can't say because they don't quite realize they want it. And I listen to that and absorb that, and then I turn around and turn that into action that entrepreneurs can take to win fans and make more money. I guess you could say what my superpower is making complicated things simple. I said, that's one hell of a superpower because entrepreneurs are really good at making simple things complicated. And so began my career working with entrepreneurs. And that's been 10 plus years. Now, as you might imagine, it didn't all go smoothly. The one big difference between Procter & Gamble and somebody who's making ice cream out of their garage, you might guess, is budget. It's a different game. But it doesn't mean it can't be done. It means there's a constraint. And where there's a constraint, there's friction. And where there's friction, there's heat and diamonds. The diamonds are creativity. You got low budget, you got to ratchet up the creativity. And that's what I've been doing. A couple of years, I started Brands Investors Love as the latest iteration of how I try to help entrepreneurs. And I want to share some of the insights that I picked up along the way, speaking with entrepreneurs like yourselves, investors and M&A specialists like yourselves, about what sort of a brand we can build and how to make that happen. I'm going to share 3 of those insights now. First insight. In my experience, even successful entrepreneurs are often stuck running product-led companies. They're stuck running product-led companies. Why? Well, it has to do with the people you're selling to and what you're selling. Most entrepreneurs are problem solvers. They're inventors, they're innovators, they're engineers. They make stuff. They make a better mousetrap. And then they go and approach a group of people and start to sell that stuff. And if they're lucky, they're successful selling that stuff. Then they hit a wall. Why do they hit a wall? They don't know why they hit a wall, but they can't sell any more stuff. Then, if they're unlucky, an M&A person comes in and says, I wish I could give you this much money for your company, but it's only worth this much. And then they become a sad entrepreneur. And at that point, I'm usually introduced to them. And I look at this and I go, aha, I see what's going on here. And in having this conversation again and again and again, a colleague of mine said to me, Mark, do you know about Geoffrey Moore and his book, Crossing the Chasm? Hands up, who's heard of Geoffrey Moore and Crossing the Chasm? Okay, good. I get to explain it to a few of you. Some of you have heard of Geoffrey Moore, and for the ones who have heard of you, consider this a reprise. We're going to do it one more time. Core to his book is the adoption curve, the natural adoption curve of people who buy your stuff in the life cycle of a product. And if you haven't seen one before, an adoption curve looks like a python that ate an elephant. You got a skinny head, gets a little bit bigger, suddenly gets really big, and then it gets little again, and at the end you've got the tail. That's the adoption curve. And there's certain people at very specific stages of the adoption curve. You got innovators over here, early adopters, early mainstream, late mainstream, and at the tail, the laggards. I'm just going to talk about this group up here. Innovators, early adopters, and early mainstream. Innovators tend to be the first people who adopt your product. Entrepreneurs, can I get a consensus? Do you feel like that you've got early innovators, if you know what early innovators are? Okay, I don't even know if you know. Hands up, who knows the definition of an innovator? Okay, a lot less folks. Let me go through it for you. An innovator is Gyro Gearloose, Donald Duck's eccentric uncle who keeps inventing stuff and stuff blows up in his face. Innovators are Doc Brown, the disgraced nuclear physicist from Back to the Future. Innovators are Woz from Apple fame. Innovators are engineers. They're people who love technology for technology's sake. They love the new, even if it doesn't work very good. If it's buggy, they don't care. They like to look under the hood and repair stuff. Innovators also don't tend to have a very high position in companies. They tend to be in the engineering department. So they don't have huge budgets. They don't run MIT. Innovators are not big spenders. Why would they be big spenders? They're helping you fix your product by corresponding with you and helping you tweak and twist it. Why would they pay you so much? And they're also not loyal. The second that an innovator finds a new project to dig into that excites them, you're off the table. Now, entrepreneurs, hands up, how many of you believe that you're selling to innovators? Okay, a couple of you. Let's see if we can get the next group. Early adopters. They're a lot like innovators in that they love technology. They're not afraid of tech. Even if it's a little buggy, that's okay. But that's where the similarity ends. Early adopters love technology not because they love technology, but because they see an advantage for their business. They think that if they adopt this new technology before their competitors, they're going to get an edge. I'm an early adopter. I constantly buy new products, new apps, new SaaS programs so that I can look more professional, more polished, more effective than my competition, and I can make more money. Early adopters love features and benefits. The more features and benefits, the more of a deal they think they're getting. They also love a low price. What they don't care for is a logo. It could be called Brand X. As long as it has great features and benefits and comes at a low price, they're good. Thing about early adopters, they're incredibly not loyal. The second the competition has one more feature or $1 less in price, you're gone. Now, in my experience, the entrepreneurs that I work with, and even fair-size entrepreneurs, tend to live selling to these people. Does that sound like a happy place? It's not a happy place. Because what this means to the entrepreneur is that they have to keep innovating. They have to keep optimizing. They have to keep customizing. And at every step, they have to keep cutting their price or holding their price. Because the second they don't, they're going to get dropped like a hot potato. Now, the way to get around that is to start selling to the mainstream. And entrepreneurs have a very hard time selling to the mainstream because the mainstream is nothing like early adopters and innovators. The mainstream doesn't care about features and benefits. They assume you've got all the features and benefits they need. They don't care about new. In fact, they quite like old. They would rather have a product that all of their friends have tested, that the reviews are in on, that everybody's already got, that works right out of the box with no instructions and no glitches than anything else. What they care about is consistency. They want a product that works every time. They want a Big Mac in Toronto that tastes exactly like the Big Mac in Tokyo. And they're not so sensitive about price. You build a proper brand, they'll pay twice as much. Just ask Apple. What they want is price consistency. They want a Budweiser that they drink in Glasgow to be the same price as that Budweiser that they drink in Georgia. These are very, very different people. Oh yeah, one point I forgot. They're extremely loyal. And they're emotional. They don't buy based on facts and figures. They based on a feel. They buy based on a feel. I like Steve Jobs. Therefore, I'm going to buy Apple. Very different animals than early adopters and innovators. So, you might understand that entrepreneurs have a really hard time jumping that chasm. And that's the whole point of Jeffrey Moore's book, Crossing the Chasm. And that is where I usually walk in, because you know who's very, very good at selling to the mainstream? Big brands. McDonald's, Budweiser, Procter & Gamble, Unilever. And that's where I add value. Second insight. What do people want? What do innovators want? What do entrepreneurs, investors, M&A people, brand builders want? Turns out we all want the same thing. Again, a lot of listening went into this. And what I discovered is that investors, M&A people, entrepreneurs, and brand builders like myself, at the root of it, we all want the same thing. What is that? Sustainable, scalable, de-risked growth. Sustainable, scalable, de-risked growth. Now, this is a smart room. There's a lot of people in here who know how to get to sustainable, scalable, de-risked growth, and I totally respect that. I'm just coming at it from a brand perspective, because oftentimes people go, well, how can a brand get me that? Simple. Sustainable growth. Once you've got a product that's working, can you expose it to a vast multitude of people who will buy that product? If you're an innovator in early adopter land, not so much. There aren't that many of them around. You need to cross into the mainstream where there's virtually limitless numbers of people who can buy your product. Sustainable growth. Scalable growth. The idea that once you've got something right, you create a system around it, you turn it into a product, and then you rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat, your costs go down, you sell more stuff. You know who does that really well? McDonald's. No disrespect intended, but my running joke is that you could shave a chimpanzee and they could run a McDonald's in 6 weeks. It's not because chimps are particularly intelligent, it's just that McDonald's is particularly brilliant. They have systems for everything. What that means is that you can pump out McDonald's, create these systems, plug people in, they've productized the entire process. And that's how they create growth. And I know that scalable growth, by productizing something, making it consistent, is the holy grail for entrepreneurs, because that's how you really grow. But let me ask you this. If you're selling to innovators and early adopters who are constantly pestering you with customizations and optimizations and tweaks and twists and lowering the price, how much time do you really get to create a product that is systematized, that you can really roll that sucker out? Big frustration for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially the ones I work with. De-risked growth. De-risked growth in terms of mergers and acquisitions, it means that the head of the company could leave and the company would still work as it did before, lowering the risk that if you buy something, it's going to collapse on itself. De-risk growth. Think about it though. If you're selling a product to people who only want a product, and the second that somebody introduces another feature and you're gone, how risky does that sound? That's extremely risky. You don't want people who have zero loyalty. You want people who are driven by loyalty and emotion to be your customers. Those are the people that love Captain Crunch. They're the people that love Coca-Cola. They will fight for Coca-Cola and Captain Crunch, even if the products are garbage and banal. That's the audience that you want. So that's the second insight. We all want the same things. Sustainable, scalable, de-risked growth. Now, third insight. How do we get there? You might be able to see this, but I got a few gray hairs. I have been very, very anxious about my capability to keep up with where marketing is going. Because yeah, I don't know how to crack the Google algorithm. I don't know what goes into a great TikTok video. I don't know how to properly package NFTs. No, wait, metaverse? No, AI. I don't know how to package the technique du jour that is going to make you instantly rich. I can't compete. In fact, none of the people in North America compete because that's now all being shipped offshore. And with AI, it's even coming from offshore and it's going straight to the robot. I can't compete. But when I talk to investors and M&A people, I said, what do people really need? What do investors really need? What do M&A people really need to see in a company that relates to brands that I could provide? The answer was very enlightening. They said a value proposition, good positioning, a good customer profile, and a story that everybody can understand and wants to repeat. Proposition, positioning, profile, story. I was very relieved to hear this because this was something that I had learned when I was 20 years old going into advertising. And that was old news by then. This was stuff that was being done by David Ogilvy and Bill Bernbach, the guy who created the great original Volkswagen campaign, in the 1950s. They had it right in the 1950s. Nothing new about this, but it works. The Mad Men, every week on their TV show, that's all they did. Value prop, positioning, customer profile, story. Turns out that it's that stuff that has never really changed, that still works, that entrepreneurs didn't have. Why? Pretty easy answer, actually. Because entrepreneurs aren't brand stewards at Unilever or Procter & Gamble. They're engineers, they're inventors, they're innovators. They're schooled to create a better mousetrap and make that really, really good and sell that. They're not programmed to talk about the customer profile or the brand story. And anything that you're not that good at, you run away from, usually. It scares you. And where do you run? You run straight to LinkedIn to buy the latest technology du jour, strap that into place, and then have it fail spectacularly in front of you because you don't have a value proposition, positioning, profile, or story. So, 3 insights. I believe that many entrepreneurs are trapped because they're running product-led companies and they haven't crossed that chasm that Jeffrey Moore talks about to running brand-led companies. I believe at the root of it all, whether you're an investor, M&A, entrepreneur, or brand builder like myself, you all want the same thing: sustainable, scalable, de-risk growth. And the way to get there isn't some technology du jour. It is by getting the fundamentals right. Value prop, positioning, customer profile, and a story. Now, I want to finish. I can't possibly finish, that is, by taking you through exercises that will help you build all of those 4 things, but I can do one. I can do one. I want to introduce you to one tool that has been deadly effective for me, and it's beautiful because it's also deadly simple. It's called the value proposition ladder. And if you can do a value proposition ladder properly, you will have a value prop that you can write on your website and sell to your customers tomorrow. You guys want to learn it? Yeah? The enthusiasm. I'm in the dead zone. That's right after lunch. Everybody goes into sugar sort of comas right now. All right, for those of you who haven't gone into sugar comas, let's build a value prop ladder. Bottom rung of the value prop ladder. What do you do? What do you make? The next rung up of the value prop ladder. What are the features and benefits? So far, so good. This is stuff you're all familiar with, right? Let me let you in on a secret. Most entrepreneurs that I work with never get beyond that until we start working together. What they do and what the features and benefits are. How many of you think that you've gotten beyond that? Entrepreneurs. Yeah, kind of. You know that I'm going to call volunteers. Most entrepreneurs are stuck there. The way you can tell if you're stuck there, take a look at your website. If it says what your product name is, what it does, and then it has a list of bullet points, all the advantages of it, you're stuck there. Now, I'm not surprised that you're stuck there, and it's entirely human to be stuck there because we all, humans, suffer from perspective bias. That is, we think that what we believe is important to everyone. We're cursed with our own perspective. In order to get to ladder rung number 3 and number 4, you have to give up control. And what you have to do is give it over to consumers. You have to flip the telescope. And to give it to consumers, you have to get to what do consumers believe I do for them? And at the very highest rung, how does that make them feel? And if you can do that, you've created something profound. What do you do? What are the features and benefits? What do consumers believe you do for them? And what's the feeling that gives them? That may sound very simple, and I'd be happy to help any of you working on that thing. Call me up, bend my ear, I don't mind. I love doing this stuff. But it's not simple, it's profound. Because if you do that, you move from selling a product to selling an emotion. You move from being disloyal to loyal. You move from being utilitarian to being in the realm of love. And that is where you create loyal consumers, and that is where you create sustainable, scalable, de-risked growth. Thank you.